Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome. My name is Sadhana. For those of you that are new to my chat, so nice to have you here this evening. And this weekly chat, I talk about cards. I talk about my experience as a reader with cards. And hi, Sacred Turtle. And yeah, so I've been trying to kind of pick a theme each week and stick to the theme. And sometimes we go off topic and sometimes we don't. And so tonight we're going to talk about temperance. And this has been kind of lots of questions have come out this week about temperance. So in regards to the difference between temperance and the Lover's card, temperance, and the Star card, and those different kinds of questions. So we will get into that as well. And I have a couple of decks to share with you tonight. And if you have any questions, I'm also happy to entertain your questions as well. So welcome, Jen, and welcome, Ange. Nice to see you here. So I'm going to start because I got a gift in the mail, and this is from a deck creator in Canada, and she sent me 2 of her new decks, and her Etsy shop is called Painter Spoon. And my plan is to do a full unboxing, maybe more of a review. I'm planning to do some readings for myself with these 2 decks because I'm absolutely in love with that Lenormand deck. And if you are looking for a Lenormand deck, you will be, I think you're going to be really happy tonight. Her name is Melissa Melissa Wotherspoon. And yeah, like I said, her Etsy shop is Painter Spoon. So I thought I would share with you so this is the first one. This is the tarot deck. So for those of you that are Dachshund fans, you're going to love this deck. It's a nice quality production. So the box is one of those magnetic opening boxes, and look at the doggy on the inside cover. Pretty sweet, hey? And it says, wishing you a beautiful journey. And yeah, so this is the guidebook, and I have not been through the guidebook. I'm going to do a full review and walk through, like I said, walk through and review. And this is my first deck that has landscape cards. So I don't have any other decks with landscape cards, and I've never done a spread or a reading with this shape of card. So that in itself is pretty exciting. And there is a beautiful doggy on every single card. Yeah, so this is pretty sweet for you dog lovers out there. And a couple of the cards just had my heart melting. They're so very, very sweet. So yeah, so you can look for that video coming up, I would say, within the next 10 days or so. So I want to thank Melissa for sending me these decks. And this is the Lenormand deck. And there was something on this box that really, oh, okay. So on the side of the box, it says the gold that heals. And through every single one of the cards, it's called the Aurum Lenormand. Oh, did I tell you the Dachshund tarot is called the Low Rider? Isn't that great? It's a really good name. So this one is called the Aurum Lenormand. Also a really nice box. So it's got that magnetic closure. Little white book, which you don't really need if you read Lenormand. And these are, they're just amazing. They're just amazing. So here's the Sun card. Oh, and they have gilding on the side. And look at this. Through each of the cards, there is this gold line. And so what I am imagining is when you do a grand tableau, that these lines are going to connect in some mysterious way. And I did match up a few of the cards. So these lines are going to run in and kind of weave their own little story together. Some of these are, I don't know if the light they're going to show here. Look at the lily. The lily's really pretty. It looks more like a lotus than a lily. And the mice. So yeah, so I'm really excited. Yay, a fellow Canadian. I saw Ange's comment. Yeah, so if you look at the cards, you can see these gold lines. And so imagine a grand tableau and having all these gold lines kind of weaving throughout the reading. And so it's like you've got your houses, you've got your spread, and you've got this crazy magical gold line, the gold that heals, running through, telling another layer of story. So I'm really excited to lay those out and do a reading. So does anybody here read Lenormand, Sacred Turtle, or Ange or Jen? Do you guys read Lenormand? I don't do it too often. I was teaching a Lenormand class, and I don't get requests for Lenormand readings very often. And I think maybe that's because people don't know about Lenormand, but as it's not as well known perhaps in this kind of circles that I walk in. But I am definitely going to be advertising and doing a couple of blogs about Lenormand over the next little bit, because when I was going through these cards, I just got really excited. I want to do some readings with these cards, and I've got these horrible readers here today. So I will try to keep them off as much as possible. So Ange has in the past, yeah, and they're really pretty. They do have numbers, but they don't have the playing card associations on them. So if you're at the point in your Lenormand journey, then you may have that memorized, so that's not a problem. But if you're a beginner and you're starting to work with the playing card associations and that's something you want on the card, those are not on these cards. So they're numbered, and yeah. So that's that. And Lenormand is really fun. It's just a whole other thing. So we're not going to talk about Lenormand tonight. We're going to talk about temperance. And I had a couple of comments on the community tab, which were really interesting. And I think with this card, a lot of people read it in a very different way. And I went through a lot of people's websites. I was looking to see if I could get some, great information from people. And yeah, it's not a card that people oh, my doggy's here, that people dive into with a great deal of confidence, I feel. And so let's really kind of look at, I've pulled, these are the cards that I've pulled tonight. So we'll look at these temperance cards, and then we'll kind of look at I'll share with you some of my thoughts on how I read this card. So temper, let's just start with, there's a few root words within this, and then there's also the Latin root, and some of these things might influence the way that you interpret this card, because I think language is really powerful. And when a deck creator changes the name of the card in some way or another, I think it's going to influence you. Like when I see, now I'm going to say this aloud, but I have no idea how badly I'm pronouncing it. The Feralt. It has an energy. And being a language teacher, it makes me want to look it up. It makes me want to see what it means. I want to look up how to pronounce it, which I didn't do just before I went live. This is a language I'm very, very curious about, and I would love to know how to say that. And so on the Green Witch, it's called the She. And this one is called Integration. So I don't know what other names. Of course, in the Thoth, it's called Art. So, yeah, and if you have a foreign language, it may have a completely different name. So there, in addition to the different kinds of interpretations of temperance, the language, the keyword, I think is going to influence you. It's going to influence the way that you read it. It's going to have some kind of, add a layer or add some kind of energy to the way that you interpret the card. So when I looked up temper, because that is it is part of the word. And when I think of temper and temperance, and I think of the cards, and I think of that kind of, there's a sense of alchemy in all of the cards, you know, there's a sense of mixing potions. And, you know, in every single card that I've seen, maybe there are some, but it seems like the two cups are really far apart, and what is flowing in between them is flowing pretty magically. Like this is like have you ever done an energy workshop and, you know, you rub your hands together? I'm sure you've all done this. And you begin to feel the energy between your hands. And depending on how in tune you are, you know, what kind of state you're in, you can begin, like silly putty, right? You can begin to feel the energy, and you can play with it, and you can expand and move the hands in and out. And so that's kind of how I feel when I see the Temperance card. It feels really, really magical. And so I was looking up this word temper, when we have temperament as well too. Some synonyms are disposition, nature, character, personality, constitution, mind, mood, frame of mind. There was just so many words that came up. And then just below that, it was talking about the degree of hardness or elasticity of metal. And I think underlying all of this, that's a really interesting thing to keep in mind. But going back historically, and the use of the word temperance is not very common in English today. I think generically it was used as abstinence from alcohol. So there was a puritanical kind of association with the word, or perhaps during the time of Prohibition, but that is a definition that comes up again and again. So abstinence from alcohol. And of course, we can expand that definition to moderation in all things, moderation in action, moderation in thought, moderation in our feelings. And so I know for a lot of people, moderation has that sense of not being able to be who you are. It's like you're controlling yourself. You are restricting yourself in some way. So it doesn't have necessarily a very good connotation for a lot of people. And also, yeah, moderation in indulgence of the appetites and of the passions. Temperance combines, okay, so this is another completely topic. So there's that piece. And for me, that's not necessarily a piece I ever go to. I really, really feel this is the card of the witch. This is the card of the alchemist. This is the card of creating the magic and the balance of your life to find harmony and to create that beautiful resonance so that you can be function at the optimum level of frequency that you possibly can. And another bit that I never ever go to has to do with the angel in the card. So many of the cards have, and traditionally have, angels in them. And Most of the ones I've showed you tonight do not. Oh, here's the Deviant Moon. There's angel wings on that one. And so as I was reading and kind of doing some preparation for this live, the other piece is that when this card comes up, it's almost like a touch of grace. It's like the angels are around. It could be interpreted as a more of a mediumship type card, that you are being looked after. And I have never, ever gone in that direction. So this card, for some people, is a level of protection. And it's just not something I've ever, it's just not the way that I read the card. And I'm always open to bringing in additional layers and additional meanings. But what I want to try to do for myself is to weave this new information into the way that I feel about this card and the way that I work with this card. So one of the stories that I read was about, so you know those days where you are sick in bed and you can't go to work, but you realize maybe I don't know, something bad happened at work. Maybe your bank was robbed, or some client came in that was really, really difficult, or something happened and it was in your highest good to stay home. And so that is the angel aspect of the card that I'm talking about, that some people bring into this reading, but I've never used that. So I'm really curious if any of you read the card in that way, because I haven't in the past. And it's not something that's ever really come up. And I think that if it needed to come up, it would have come up in a reading. And I've done a lot of readings in the last 20 years, and that's not a way that I've ever gone. So I'm just curious. I'm really curious if you read the card in that way, and how often you read that card in the way, and does that ever come up for you? So I want to kind of focus tonight on I don't know if you saw the video I uploaded yesterday on the pagan decks. When I was making that video, I started to get really moved by some of the cards. And I love working with the elements. When I kind of step away from my practices, I have this feeling of, you saw the video, Ange. I'm not sure if that's what the yes is in response to. When I step away from my practices, I feel like life starts going in a direction that I don't want it to go. It's kind of like when chaos starts to happen when I'm not in the flow of my practices. And I'm not talking about complicated practices. I'm talking about really simple things. Like even in the morning when I make my coffee, I have a Keurig with a refillable pod, where you put your own coffee in, and I have little bits of different spices and I put them in. And it almost feels like I'm creating a little magic potion in the morning. And when I don't do that, my experience with the coffee is different. And you might not think of that as a practice, but for me, that is just part of really paying attention to what it is I need. And there's also a sense of playfulness with that. When so I'm a vegetarian. I live with, sometimes my vegan children are home. And so sometimes I'm cooking and eating vegan. Sometimes I'm eating vegetarian. And my 12-year-old daughter eats meat from time to time. And sometimes I actually cook it for her. And there's this awareness of food for sure in this house. And there is always, I don't know if I've shared this joke with you. So when I have one younger daughter who lives here, and then I have a 22-year-old daughter that comes home frequently. And when she's here, the juicer and the blender are always going, always. And I made this joke that I was going to get some industrial, earphones to put in the kitchen so that, anyway, because it's always on and it's really noisy. But that's not the point of my story. It's that she is the best example of somebody that I know of creating potions, and she shares them with me. So I actually love it when she comes home, despite the noise, because she's always making these beautiful, beautiful concoctions. And sometimes they have way too much ginger in them, and they're way too spicy. And I don't know if spicy is the right word for ginger, but too rajasic. So I let her know that. And one of the things I do to work with her is to help her to find the balance in all of these potions that she's creating. So she's a really good example of temperance in action with the food on her plate. Like, she's always making these beautiful vegetable bowls all seasons of the year and things like that. So when you think of temperance, I want you to really think of everything from food to, how many of you watch a lot of Netflix, right? Do you always watch the same series, the same kind of movie? Or do you mix it up? Do you mix up your rom-coms with your historical dramas and things like that? Like, do you temper that kind of input as it comes in a way that feels, like sometimes if you OD on, you're binge watching a series or something, doesn't it make you feel kind of sick actually after a while? Not only from sitting on the couch for too long or lying in your bed for too long, or especially if you're watching on your phone, but it's the quantity, but also the content. And so with the tempering, I think it's really important with the content of the food, the content. We've talked about this before, all of the senses. So think of temperance as, what goes in the mouth, what goes in the ears, what goes in the eyes, what you feel on your skin, quite literally, what you feel kind of extra sensory wise, so all of these aspects, I think, play a role in temperance. So I wanted to speak specifically to some of these cards. And there's a few nuggets here I have in my notes. Oh, before I go on. Okay, so let's just, in summary, there's kind of 3 aspects of this card. So one is the whole angel thing and being looked after and the guidance and the mediumship side. And then there is the side of the magical potion bit. Okay. And I'm going to put all of the things I just said about all of the input into that one. There's a third one, but I'll come back to that. I don't know how well I can explain this, but I'm going to try. Okay. When people break off parts of their personality, so they have a personality for work and they talk a certain way, they use a certain vocabulary, they hold their body in a certain way, and then when they go out with their buddies at night, maybe not from the office but with another group of people, they talk in a certain way, or their classmates from school, their vocabulary changes, their personality changes, they probably wear different things. Or when they go home to the family, it's like, and if their friends from work saw them talking to their family, like they wouldn't recognize them. Do you have friends like that? Do you know people like that who have these really definite personalities and they're very, very separate? I'm just going to have a quick look over here. So I think this is I'm laughing at Angie's comment, Outlander to The Witcher. Yeah. I'm going to try to get to this point. So people who separate off their personalities, or I don't know if personality is the right word. It's like they feel like they have to behave and act in a certain way in different places. And I think underlying that is is that too harsh? They don't know who they are, or they don't have the confidence to be who they are, or they're afraid to let people know who they are, or, there might be, it's not going to be the same for everybody, but there's a sense of a surety that comes with people who are so authentic in every situation. It doesn't matter if they go home and see their family, or they go to a conference with their colleagues. They are the same, genuine, warm, not necessarily warm. They're the same person. Their personality doesn't change. You know what they're going to be like. You know what they're going to talk like. You know how they're going to be. And so there's a sense of integration of a person as opposed to disintegration of a person. And I feel that this component of temperance is really, really interesting. So I'm going to build on this. The yogic term, the term yoga means union. And I'm just using yoga because that's my comfort zone, but this teaching comes up in all kinds of spiritual teachings. This idea of, the yin and the yang. The yin and the yang is a complete circle, right? It's a complete shape. There's not a white part and a black part. It's a whole part. And in the teachings of yoga refers to the whole piece. And you might know the word like hatha yoga. So we have the sun and the moon. So that means sun and moon. Hatha means that. And so we have this masculine and feminine aspect coming together. And we talk about the sides of the body. We have our lunar side and our solar side, sometimes called the feminine side and the masculine side. And when we are overpowered or understimulated in one side, when we have all our injuries on one side of the body or the other, there's so many different examples, but when we as a physical being aren't in balance, then we can't identify, or we don't understand what this whole means. I think it was in the Weaver's Oracle. Do you know the Weaver's Oracle? There's a beautiful guidebook that goes with it. And I'm going to say Carolyn. Oh, I hope you've got the right name. Is that the guidebook writer? She says in the beginning, she's talking about formulating questions. And I remember it from that guidebook. She said something about, you're not broken. You are already whole. Everything is already there. You've just forgotten. And so the question that I remember that was so powerful was, what have I forgotten? And I think that is a really good question to ask the tarot, to ask oracle cards when you sit down. And some people phrase that in a different way, like, what is the most important thing I need to know right now? But what have I forgotten has this different layer of energy. So with temperance, we have this idea of alchemy, right? This idea of something getting mixed together. But what is it that's getting mixed together? what is the association with food when we're making a smoothie? What is the outcome? What is the goal of making a smoothie or creating your own juice if you're doing juicing, or even making a plate of food? When you make a plate of food, do you have, we have such limiting kind of sense of the 4 basic food groups, in North American, I don't even know what the nutritional guidelines. We don't talk about pungent. We don't talk about sour, salty, sweet, that kind of thing, bitter. And these are all really important things. And so I remember when I was pregnant with one of my children, and it was a holistic practitioner that said, you've got to eat your bitters. Like, your diet is just crying out for bitters. And she was going through all the different reasons, and it happened to be summer, so it's awesome. I can eat dandelion greens and all that kind of stuff. But when we sit down to make a plate of food, do you have bitter food? Do you have pungent food? Do you have salty food, sweet food? Like, are you balancing? Are you the alchemist of the meal that you create? And there's different paradigms, of course, and different ways to look at that. And we all have certain restrictions about what we can and cannot eat. Time is always an issue. Money is an issue. But I think if we kind of take a different attitude to what we put on our plate and make it more of a potion for our well-being, not only for our physical body, but for our emotional body, for our mental health, then it becomes kind of fun. And I think that's what my daughter is doing. I think her awareness to food and her choice, because she was raw vegan for about 8 months. And I was so worried about her, because raw vegan, I think it's fine to be raw vegan in the summer, but it's very hard on your digestion. It's very hard for your body to process all that raw food. And I think there's a place and a time for different kinds of diets. And I had to let her go through that journey on her own. And then she came to this point where she started bit by bit cooking certain portions of food and eating warm foods. So this whole sense of alchemy, when this card comes up for me in a reading, it's like a bit of a mystery. So I need to find out which aspect of the querent's life is not, don't want to use the word balance, because balance is associated with many, many other cards, but not active. I feel there's a tremendous amount of action in this card. Responsibility of yourself, responsibility of the querent to take action, to consciously create this yoga. There is a mantra, Purnamida Purnamidam. And I have a t-shirt from the ashram in British Columbia I've spoken about before, my teacher here in BC. And I'm pretty sure on the t-shirt it says 1 + 1 is 1. And then it says Purnamida. And I think this is a really important thing to remember, that 1 + 1 is 1. And this simply means that we can't take away from the whole, because the whole is already whole and we're already whole. We can't add to the whole. We just need to become more aware of what that is and the pieces that we have forgot, like I mentioned from that other guidebook. I'm going to read you. I hope you like these quotes that I pick up. So this is a really good one. I just have one for today. This kind of goes back to the split personality thing, but I want you to try to kind of dig deep and apply the split personality thing to the split menu, or maybe I can come up with some other examples for you. Separations take away from the ability to be spontaneous, to live moment to moment. Okay, I'm going to speak to that. I just thought of another example with a food example. Sorry, I'm a bit of a foodie. Separations take away from the ability to be spontaneous. So let's go back to the example of feeling like you have to be a certain way at work. You have to talk a certain way. You have to behave a certain way. You can't let your boss know that you are a card slinger. And maybe you have to take out your piercings. I don't know, whatever the example is. These separations of identity, and I really want to try to apply this to other things because it's such a good example. I want to apply the word identity to other examples. So these separations mean that you can't spontaneously behave in a way that your authentic personality wants to. And so it's like, I hate using all these Harry Potter terms, but I do refer to Harry Potter a lot. I think there's a lot of good teachings in Harry Potter. Yay, Harry Potter. Thank you, J.K. Rowling. And I hate to use Voldemort as an example, but when we compartmentalize or break off these parts of us, we become so little, and we aren't whole. We aren't. It's like, do you get what I'm saying? You know, like in order to feel well, in order to feel whole, we need to be authentic. And that's what temperance is. It's bringing in the balance of all of these components so that we learn and we have the courage, we have the strength to be who we really are. And when this card comes up, like I said, it's like a little bit of a 20 questions, because I want to know why they're not being the person across the table from me, or the person across the camera from me, or maybe I'm not even in contact with them. What is it that you are not being authentic about? And then I'm sure right now you can think of a whole bunch of minor cards that are going to support that. And so for me, that is the kind of the crux of this temperance card. Multiple languages. That is a whole other thing too, right? And the more languages that you speak, so I speak a few languages, and it definitely adds layers of perception, right? And there's also cultural expectations with certain languages, and certain languages have you behave in a certain way, for sure, because some languages are way more structured than others because of the levels of politeness, or different levels of, well, let's just say with different levels of politeness as an example. So yes, right? So that does kind of shift our personality, and some languages appear to be a lot more, the language itself has a different personality than another language, and we might be more comfortable speaking one language than another. But what if what if we could shift from language to language? This is a really good example. Thank you, Ange. What if we could shift from language to language and somehow find our way to be exactly who we are in the language? Now, granted, you're going to have to be a really good speaker of the language to do that. But I think the hope of the Temperance card is that you begin to have more awareness about that. So let's look at a few cards. So this is Everyday Witch. And of course, I go to the yoga one first. There's quite a few yoga cards in this deck, aren't there? Maybe two, only two, three. I have a few decks that have different yoga poses. And the thing about yoga is what we do on one side, we always do on the other side. And when I teach, you know that I'm a yoga teacher? Yeah. So when I have the students transition between, I always give them a few moments of integration. And then when people go to the other side, it's like, oh, wow, this side is completely different. It might be more open, but it also might be way more restricted. And so the practice of yoga is to be aware of that, and over time to bring the balance to yoga. And you see how she's opening and closing her eyes. So this is a practice in balancing postures, is to actually begin to be able to be in a balancing posture and either shift your gaze. So you can either shift your gaze up, or you can begin to close one eye and then the other eye, and maybe do a balancing pose with both eyes closed. Franglish. Yes, I know that language. So there's so many beautiful cards here. So here's another. This one looks kind of traditional. So we've got the fire and the water. And one of the things I do look for, excuse me, in a deck is that, oh, and I've got to go back to the elements. So sorry, I lost that train of thought. I was talking about getting really excited with doing that video yesterday, and the pagan decks, part of the deck collection series. And so this is a practice, the balancing of the fire and water, or the mixing of the fire and the water, right? Making sure on the plate we have cooling foods and warming foods, making sure that we, the body has, it's not too hot and it's not too cold. This is the Anna Kay Tarot. And I believe it's called Temperance. Yes, it's called Temperance. And to me, when I look at this card, this is a person, much like in the Seven of Pentacles, who is sitting back and looking at the results of their hard work, right? Of having the right amount of sun on the garden, the right amount of water. And it's a lot of work. And I think we need to remember that temperance doesn't come easily, right? It's something that we have to constantly be working on. This is the Osho Zen. I believe it's called integration, but I don't remember. I cut off the keywords so long ago. And you have all kinds of symbols here that reflect the idea of that integration, of the wholeness, of the oneness. So down on the bottom is the Ouroboros. And then we have the yin yang. And we have the sun and the moon, the ha and the ta. This is one of my favorite temperance cards. This is from the Marielle. When I saw this card, it was like, yes, yes. And you know why I think I relate to that card? I'm a Leo. I have a lot of fire in my chart, but I love the water. Oh my God, get me to the ocean 8 months of the year and I'm in it. I want to be in it. I need to have that temperance. It's hard to have all these fire symbols. And so I'm in the bath all the time. And I think over time, that's the way I have found to integrate the elements. And that is to like do my best to get in the tub every single night. I mean, not every night if possible, but and get to the ocean and get in the water to balance all that fire in my chart. My God, I'm even a tiger in my my Chinese year. This one's called Integration. This is from Vision Quest. And so what we have here is a weaving. And there's a really beautiful, oh, I was going to bring the book over. I'll try to paraphrase what this card is about. So the weaving is complete, and this person is sitting in front of it, meditating, sitting in gratitude, whatever they're doing. And then the birds that she has woven into the blanket or the wall hanging begin to fly away. And it's like she no longer needs them because she's learned the lesson. She's created the balance through the process of doing the weaving. And it's that alchemy of, give and release. It's such a beautiful, there's so many beautiful quotes, like just the more you give away, the more that will come to you. And if we are grasping all the time, the things that we want won't come to us. But you can't always be giving, right? There needs to be this beautiful balance between the giving and the receiving. And that's how I feel when I see that card. Here's a more contemporary temperance card from the Spirit Within. And when you get a really, really good DJ at an event and nobody sits down, everybody's up and they're dancing and everybody's happy and moving, and like I really understand this card. And I guess pulling out these cards is another way to kind of bring all of these teachings together. When you have a bad DJ, nobody gets up and dances, right? So it's an art. It's an art. And maybe, I don't have that many Thoth-based decks, and I have not put a lot of time into studying the Thoth. But I understand why temperance is called art. So this is the urban. And I'm quite a creative person, and I've made a lot of different things, a lot of different arts and crafts over the years. And there is this, it's like when you sew, the tension has to be right. And if you've ever used a serger, you know what I'm talking about. You have so many settings on a serger that you have to get just perfectly right in order for the garment to look proper. But there's this alchemy in art. And of course, it is not everybody likes the same kind of art, but the experience of creating art is that beautiful blending of media. And there's certain art that transcends time. It's because the colors, the textures are so beautifully woven. It's like you don't know where one piece of the art begins and where it ends. It's just like all, I don't know. I'm thinking of some of the like pointillism, or some of the, sometimes you look at a piece of art and you blur your eyes and you don't really know what you're looking at, and then you step back and you see the whole picture. It's kind of what I'm thinking of, like this beautiful integration. So integration is a really, really good word for this card, but I think we forget the work that goes behind it. And so when I'm doing a reading and when I'm working with the client, and as a reader, sometimes I feel like I need to ask the hard questions. And depending on how much time I have and how well I know the querent, but today it happened, and often it comes through download. So I kind of feel like it's a quick cheat for me, but I want to be in service. And when people come for a reading, it's because I want to help them on their journey. I want them, I don't want them. That's my ego. To be in service is such a beautiful thing. And if I can have be of some assistance to getting them back on their path or working through something, then my job is done. So yeah. Then here's the Guardian. And this is a deck that I have pulled out recently. I put it away for a long time because I'm one of those people that found it kind of creepy, some of the cards. But this is done really well, and this is one card that makes sense to me, and we've got the sun and the moon cycles and things like that. So it's really hard when you have a card like this one. This is the Bonfire, when there's a lot going on and you need to kind of really sit, because in a reading, I'm looking for something on the card to kind of give me a clue if something intuitively is not coming through, or I'm not getting a download. And sometimes these cards work really well because there's going to be one tiny little thing in the corner of the card, or maybe the querent is going to say, like, why is there I don't know what's on this card. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. But the querent themselves is going to find a little tiny symbol on the card and draw your attention to that. And then you're going to go, okay, that's where we're going to go. And so in reading intuitively, it's really important to allow those kind of things to come forth. And you've heard me speak to that before. And I think it's really, do you guys use this deck, the Deviant Moon? This is a really cool deck to work with. I feel like this deck is one that small spreads, for me, small spreads work best because there's a lot of levels and a lot of layer. And when we are working with a deck, for me, this is more of a shadow deck. If people are ready to really dig deep, I like to pull this deck out. But, we have the sun and the moon, the gold and the silver in the head, and we have the gold wings and then the blue body. So it feels, for a deck that is kind of out there. And if you haven't read Patrick's coffee table book, it's amazing. Like, if you have this deck and you don't use it, I would recommend getting that coffee table book, because it's going to open your eyes to the mystery and the stories behind this deck. So yeah, so let me catch up with the chat and just see if there's anything that I have missed. Yeah. Oh, and we have things in common. Yes, and several needles in the serger too. So, so yeah, so this is not an easy card. This is not an easy card. And so when this card comes up, my first question is, and I don't like to word it negatively, like what is out of balance, because I don't want to use the word balance for this card. Like I said, too many cards have that word balance associated with them. So how can I bring the awareness of temperance, the awareness of what moderation? Moderation is another kind of sticky word. Remember we were talking about the personalities? So there's a sense of separation. So disintegration, separation. How can we bring that together? So when this card comes up, I think we need to kind of look at what is separated, what needs to come together, okay? Which is different than balance, because often with this kind of integration, there's a few things that need to come into play. And not saying there isn't with balance, but there's something about the language of this card that is really important. And to empower yourself or to empower your querent to become their own healer. And I think healer is another word you can associate very much with this deck. Not this deck, this card. Yeah. So I'm going to save the Sastra-Ibido because I'm going to speak to that one in a moment. Here's another. I showed you this one already from the Green Witch. This is a really cool card. This is from New Era Elements. And this is an Indian man from India. And he's in maybe the Ganga or another river. And he is going in to be cleansed. And then he's offering these flowers, this flower mala, to the sun. And it's about the alchemy of the elements and this kind of, it's so hard to explain these because these are such beautiful, deep spiritual teachings. And maybe this is what I was feeling when I was doing that video yesterday, is that when we invite these elements into our life and we notice them and we understand them, it's like New Year's Eve. I don't know if I talked about this. So New Year's Eve, I went to bed early because I really wanted to get up for the sunrise. And I really wanted to be with the sunrise and to take some time and to meditate and then do some photos. And that was more important to me than to be at the party. And I felt so good and so connected to the dirt and the trees and the sun and everything that happened during that sunrise. It was so beautiful. And when the elements, right? So whether it's outside, whether it's on your plate, whether it's the music that you listen to, right? When the elements are in balance, I just feel so good. And yeah, so that is, I think that's what this card is about. It's a reminder. It's a reminder of that integration that might be missing, you know, and there's different ways that will arise. So let me talk about this one. So do you know why he's blue? Did you ever ask yourself why he's blue? And maybe you guys know the answer to this question because I really want to speak to this. And you're a Leo too. Oh, hi. I didn't say hi to Brianne. And if anybody else has come in and I didn't say hi, hi. Hi. You know, I hate it. I actually hate it when I'm on a live chat and I come in and the mod, not the mod. Well, I love it when the mods say hi because I know now what this is like my 10th, maybe my 10th live. I know how hard it is. And my chat is not very busy yet. It will be one day to say hi to everybody as they come in. So I really appreciate it when the mods say hi to everyone. So this is a really, really, really interesting. And maybe this kind of goes full circle back to the angel thing. Okay. I'm going to try to figure out how to share this with you. So I want you to think about the Hindu god, goddess pantheon. And there's a bunch of them that are blue, right? And I don't know if Stacey Barrington had this intention. But when I saw this card, first of all, I thought right away, okay, she knows about these teachings. So the reason that Shiva is blue, Vishnu is blue, is because they drank the poison from, they drank poison. I'm going to keep this simple. They drank poison. And the reason they drank poison was so that all the other gods and goddesses didn't become ill. Shiva, we'll just use him as an example, it's not a him, it's an energy, was able to drink the poison because he was of a certain frequency that was able to process the poison. So in drinking the poison, he didn't become sick. Maybe there was a shudder through his energy body or something, but he was able to take that on. He was able to take on that poisonous energy for everyone else. And I'm sure other stories are coming up for you now. Oh, well, that's just like, yeah, it's just like that. So there are certain levels of beings, even on this planet today, because I've met some of them, and they are able to take on other people's karma, be it a disease or a way of life, and they're able just simply to touch them or to be near them and to take on their illness or to take on a certain karma, okay, so something that's going on in their life. And then they're able to digest it in a way that happens relatively quickly. I know a few stories where they actually get sick for a period of days or weeks, but that disease would have killed the other person, the human. The disease would have actually killed the muggle. And for one reason or another, they believed that it was in the highest interest, the higher purpose for that person to not go through that experience. And so these stories of these high level enlightened beings taking on poison for us, I think is a really beautiful thing to kind of remember, that, you know, just to know that having that higher, if we continue to work on our own frequency, if we continue on our journey to purify, raise our frequency. And yeah, we're going to go fall down in the pits and go back and forward. But if we continue to raise our frequency, then we know that things are always going to be better and things are always going to be easier. And I think when we hear stories of people like this, or we know teachings like this, it can be inspiring. It can be truly, truly inspiring. So we have this blue dude here who's kind of taken on the poison for someone in service. And maybe, he's mixing something, right, to give back to them so they feel much better. Oh, I just thought of this really cool example. Okay, in Japan, this is really actually quite common. So so when you have cancer, I'm sure maybe this practice happens elsewhere. I don't know. I'm just using it because I know what happens in Japan. So they take your blood. I don't know how many liters they take, or I don't know how often you do it, but they take your blood, your cancer-laden blood, and they process it, and then they give it back to you. That is temperance. That is temperance. I don't know what that practice is called, but I don't know. I think that's amazing. Kind of when I lived in, so what year did I go to Japan? I went to Japan in 1985. So the first time I was in Japan from 1985 to 1988. One of my students, I was teaching English at an English language school then, and she had cancer, and she was doing or had been doing this treatment for, I think, years, a couple of years, and she was well and she was fine. And so, yeah. Okay, so that's a pretty amazing example of temperance. So I want to hear how you practice temperance without feeling. So I think part of this whole balance thing is not feeling like restricted, because temperance is not a restriction. It's a freedom. And so how do you practice temperance so that you feel you're continuing to purify and move forward, but not feel restricted? So, yeah. I'll tell you one thing. I don't have a bathroom scale in my house. I haven't had a bathroom scale for 15 years, maybe. That was something that I just like, this is ridiculous, because a bathroom scale is very, very restrictive. It screws everything up. It ruins so many things as far as food choices and the way you plan your meals and things. It's just my humble opinion. My opinion. Yeah. So I want to know. I want to know how you bring temperance into your life. Okay. So that's one question. And then the other question is, with this card, when it comes up in a reading, I know every situation is different and it's going to depend on the surrounding cards. So do you kind of go the way that I'm going, or is the angel really important? And I talked about that earlier on in the video, about that whole kind of the angel presenting their self as kind of a protective energy and kind of stepping in your way, kind of like a Ganesh energy, stepping in your way to protect you from something or to divert you from something. Because that was completely new to me. I had never heard that before I was actually prepping for this video. So yeah, and I'm sure there's lots of other subtle ways to work with this card. So yeah. But I think the most important question I have, and I really hope that some of you do comment about this after the video, is how do you temper your life without feeling restricted? Yeah, yeah. So it'd be really, really cool if I could hear your voices. because I would love to chat live with some of you. And maybe we can do that sometime. So thank you. Thank you very much for joining. Oh, hello, Angelic Michelle. What a sweet name. Sagamauri. Sagamauri. Yeah, the spelling doesn't seem right, because if I'm reading that in Japanese, it's Sagamauri. I'm not sure. So yeah, so maybe you are watching this video because you need to back off on the restriction and you need to let the magic flow, right? Because I think in 90% of these temperance cards, the magic is flowing, right? I've picked out all these different ones today. I didn't hardly pick out any traditional ones, but you know what I mean? Like the water or whatever that is kind of flowing between the cups, right? And so if we have restriction, we can't have magic. We need to kind of back off and step out of our own way. Yeah. Okay. Oh, hi, Amber. You want to come say hi? You want to say hi? Can you see her? There she is. Say hi, baby. She's being so good. She was sitting at my feet the whole time. So thank you. Thank you for joining me tonight. Stay well. And I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Bye for now.